I have been finding disturbing items in my car that are not mine. When I checked my home security camera, I screamed. I, 29F, have been with my husband, 30M, for 7 years, married for 4. I have never had reason to suspect he was unfaithful to me or even remotely dissatisfied with our marriage. He likes to joke that we're still living in the honeymoon phase nearly 5 years and 2 kids in. I wouldn't have questioned that or him were it not for a surprise I found in his car last month. When buckling our daughter into her car seat, I noticed something slotted between the cushions. I pulled it out and saw that it was a tampon. This wouldn't have been so unusual had I not had an IUD that has stopped my period for the past year, and I didn't even recognize the wrapper style. I brought it to my husband's attention and he didn't seem to understand what it was, let alone why I was holding it, until I told him where I'd found it and why I was almost certain it wasn't mine. He shrugged and said it probably belonged to his coworker, Fiona. It's not uncommon for my husband to carpool to lunch with his coworkers, and we're both fairly close to Fiona and her husband, so I figured it was entirely possible that the tampon had slipped out of her purse whenever he had driven with them or offered her a ride. No big deal. I put it out of my mind until we had dinner with Fiona and her husband a couple of weeks later. I had sincerely wanted to believe my husband. I just couldn't get over the way it had been tucked in the seat and how my husband had seemed not to have any regard for it whatsoever. Maybe playing dumb, I don't know. I did something that I now feel kind of crazy for doing. I faked an emergency and asked Fiona if she had any tampons while we were out together. She then handed me one, almost identical to the tampon I'd found in our back seat, and I breathed a sigh of relief. So the tampon there was probably the same tampon here, and in all likelihood, there was an innocent explanation as to why it had been left in the backseat in the first place. I thought I had seen the last of the out-of-place feminine hygiene products until I found another tampon this morning, this time in my sock drawer. I feel physically ill at the thought of my husband having an affair, and even more nauseated at the thought that the woman might have left these tampons out for me to find. If it was my husband's coworker, why would she give herself away by offering me one the other night? In any other situation, I would want to talk to my husband about this, but I feel too sick and embarrassed to approach him with what I found. What should I do? Here are some relevant comments. One user said, OP, I've had a period 30 years and never put a tampon in a sock drawer. Trust your gut and get cameras. Neither have I. I've considered so many explanations for the tampons that wouldn't implicate my husband, but none of them make sense really. I'm terrified to set up a camera if it means confirming what I suspect right now. Then another user asked, OP, has Fiona ever been over to your house and had time to plant the tampon? She's been to our house many times, and vice versa. To my knowledge, she wasn't over any time in the past week, so if she planted that second tampon, she'd have to have found a window of time when I wasn't home. Anytime she and her husband visit, we all stay downstairs, and you'd have to really go out of your way to make it to our bedroom, i.e. around dogs, over the security gate, past the bedrooms. Not saying it's impossible, but definitely tricky to do on a quick bathroom break, I would guess. Then user 3 asked, how old are your kids? Could they have found a tampon and put it in a random place? They are 2 and almost 4. Both have a mischievous streak, so I didn't want to rule out the possibility of one of them moving stuff around, but I can't imagine how they would get their hands on one, possibly 2 random tampons that I never bought. Update post, 18 days later. Contemplating every possible source of 2 tampons has been my personal hell for the past few weeks, but I wanted to share an update. Shortly after posting on here, I told my sister what happened. The tampon in the back seat and the sock drawer, my husband's cluelessness, the tampon from Fiona, and all the things I suspected but didn't want to believe. We compared tampons, save for the back seat one I had already discarded, and they were a match, just in different absorbencies. I hadn't left either in a place where my husband or daughters would have found them and moved them around. My daughters didn't know what they were or where they had come from. My sister was convinced it was Fiona, either screwing my husband, screwing with me, or both. Direct confrontation of either party still seemed like a bad idea, so she suggested inviting Fiona and her husband over for our Labor Day barbecue. Unfortunately, they already had plans. My sister and I agreed that it was too soon for cameras without any other evidence, so it was just a waiting game from there. I was watching my husband for any changed behavior. There was none. Our house for any misplaced or foreign items. There were none. And even the girls for any new friends they might have met. My sister's husband was adamant on this last point, and partly why he was inclined to believe that the tampons were harmless. If anything had been happening in or around our home, he said it would be nearly impossible to keep it from me and the girls, since my husband was the one taking them to and from daycare and most other activities during the week. I felt a good bit of consolation in that. It wasn't until my younger daughter, 2 years old, came down with something last week that I felt any differently. I wanted to be the one home taking care of her, but my husband insisted that I stay at work while he stayed home with her. I was okay with that. My sister and her husband figured it was a good sign that he would take the time off at a moment's notice, and at that point, we were already beginning to put the tampon fiasco behind us. By the third or fourth day, I was just happy to see a near-healthy child, and a husband who was helping to see her through it. Toward the end of the week, though, I came home to something strange. The toddler that I had left that morning in an old PJ set was now dressed in a onesie I'd never seen before, with a tiny clip in her hair. I can't say I have the sharpest memory, but I have a pretty good sense of what my kids wear on a day-to-day basis, and especially what kinds of clothes they wear. I had sworn off the full-length sleep suits with snaps across the front long before we had ever had our second. The long snaps are just a pain in the ass and a no-go for efficient diaper changes. It's just not something I would dress her in, and my husband knows as much. He doesn't plan for or buy the girls' clothes, and he certainly doesn't accessorize them, so I was bewildered and kind of floored at the thought of someone around our sick child without my knowledge. I did not think twice, and I went straight to my husband to ask if anyone had been over to see him or the girls. He seemed confused, like before, and asked me why I would think that. It had just been him and the kids all day. I asked him again if someone had so much as stopped by to say hello, and he denied it. He told me to calm down. I might have lashed out and come forward with the accusations right then and there, but our older daughter was in the room, and she sensed something was up. In a calmer voice, I asked him a third time if anyone had been around our children, and my husband swore that the girls hadn't been around anyone but him. He also denied buying new clothes or doing anyone's hair. With our daughter in the room and my emotions all over the place, I decided to leave it. I couldn't make sense of it then, and it hardly seems clearer now, after I've driven myself half crazy with explanations that aren't adding up. Edit. I would like to answer a couple of questions. 1. My 2-year-old can only string together a couple of words at a time, and when I ask her about her time with daddy, or her clothes or bow, she answers based on the cues I give her, such as, "Who gave you that pretty bow?" and she repeats "pretty bow" back to me, or "mommy, daddy" over and over. My older daughter, almost 4, was at daycare that morning, and she can't recall anything different from that day. Doesn't remember the PJ change or the hair clip, so my guess is she was changed sometime that morning, but I'm not totally sure. 2. I have a 45-minute commute to work, so stopping by for lunch isn't really feasible. My sister has been kind enough to leave work and drive past a few times here and there, and she hasn't seen anything out of the ordinary. And 3, we have a Ring camera at the front door, and I've got the app on my phone with notifications on. Nothing there yet. If anyone has recommendations for more discreet surveillance, I'd be open to it. I'm just the least tech-savvy person and worry another camera will be easy to detect. And yes, we get our carbon monoxide detectors tested regularly. Here are some more relevant comments. One user asked, "Is it possible one of the hair clips came from daycare?" I could see the hair clip being a possibility, but less likely on the onesie. My younger daughter hadn't been to daycare in days, and if either of them had returned with something like that before, I would have noticed, especially since it was the kind of onesie I hated with a passion. Final update. 2 tampons means my marriage is over. Final update. 2 tampons means my marriage is over. After nearly losing my mind over a hair clip and a onesie, I realized I wasn't getting anywhere with the accusations and half-baked guesswork. I had gotten so absorbed in the paranoia and misery of my situation that I wasn't sleeping, eating, or caring for my kids the way I should have been, and I wasn't getting any answers. So I decided to pull the trigger on the hidden cameras and then have them shipped to my sister's house, with my brother-in-law agreeing to help with the install and setup over at my place. Before the cameras were ever delivered, though, I got my long-awaited confirmation last week. A Ring notification had alerted me to motion at the front door while I was at work. Half expecting to see a delivery person, pet, or lawn care salesman for the 15th time, you can imagine my surprise when I saw a clip of a young woman leading my daughter into the house hand in hand, with my husband and other daughter close behind them. The girls were supposed to be in daycare, and my husband at work. The woman, as far as I knew, was living 2 states away with a court order keeping her there. I immediately called my husband to ask him who the flying F this woman was doing in our house. house. He didn't answer, so I texted it to him. Even in his stupidity, he probably realized he had messed up by going through the front door, knowing I had gotten the Ring notification, and wanted to delay the inevitable. By the 5th or 6th subsequent call, though, he did pick up. The woman on the camera was my husband's sister. As I would come to find out later, she was likely the source of both tampons, the onesie, and the bow. She is also a registered sex offender and a recovering addict who spent the better part of her adolescence and young adulthood coercing the silence of another one of my husband's family members after she had SA'd him. I hadn't seen or heard from her in years, and from the way my husband talked about her, I didn't expect I ever would. But here she was, in our house, with our children. Suffice to say, I was livid. It wasn't an affair at all, and still somehow infinitely more disgusting knowing who it was and why all of this had been happening. Apparently, my sister-in-law, fresh off another stint in rehab, had wanted to reconnect and make amends with people she had hurt, and my husband was high on that list. My husband didn't want me to know, or worse, try and keep her family, our children, away from her, so they had been meeting in secret, often at our house while I was at work. They would enter through the garage in my husband's car, so the Ring camera at the front door wouldn't tip me off. She spent the night on a weekend I had been on a business trip and slept in our bed. She babysat our girls on a night my husband told me he had dropped them off at his parents'. She bought the girls clothes and dressed my youngest in the onesie and bow that my husband had promised on his life I had dressed her in myself. My husband swore this was all in my head, the tampons, the onesie, the bow, and all the rest. He was perfectly content to watch me agonize for weeks over a woman he insisted didn't exist, shrugging off each progressively more unsettling discovery like it was news to him, and telling me I was being irrational. He insinuated that I was experiencing postpartum depression 2 years after I had given birth, 4 years after I had told him that one of my biggest fears for motherhood was to suffer from PPD like my mother had with me, to not be fully present for our babies, and be left with a world of guilt and regret as they grew older. He told me I wasn't sleeping enough, that I missed the girls too much, that I needed to take a step back and reevaluate the state of my mental health. I gave him the benefit of the doubt because he was my husband and because no other version of events made sense. Now, after a month of these mind games, I have nothing to show for my trust but this pathetic situation and a lot of anger. And as for calling the cops and a lawyer, I am already on it. Believe me, we are going scorched earth on this man. So I'm curious, do you guys think that the husband was in the right or the wrong? If you think the husband was in the right, I have one question. What's wrong with you? All right, no one should agree with this husband here, and I'm willing to bet that no one does reasonably so. Yes, he brought his sister to the home, but you know what his sister is? A predator. No, you need to talk about that at the minimum. You'd be like, hey, my sister has been to rehab and she would like to reconnect. And then the wife can be like, I'll think about it. Probably no, let's be honest. I feel so bad for this woman. She wanted to believe that it could have been anything else. Maybe a bird dropped it from the sky. I don't know. But it was somehow worse than infidelity and cheating. I don't think we've ever had a story like this where it was somehow worse. We read a lot of these stories and it goes to cheating, but this was worse. How do you do worse than cheating? Oh my goodness. But anyway, guys, next story. Story number 2. My 31F fiance 39M snapped, and I'm unsure if I am overreacting. My fiance and I have been together 3 years and living together too. He's definitely a hothead. It's been a problem in the past, but he's a wonderful partner otherwise. He cooks, I clean. We both work, and we are best friends. We spend all our time together, going on road trips, trying new foods, or just hanging out. He has lost it in the past over small things, followed someone home twice over drinking, and he yelled at them. He's an angry driver in general. He thinks no one can drive and is often speeding through traffic. His angry driving is an everyday occurrence. I let him drive because it's not worth the stress if I drive because he doesn't like it. He punched a hole in a closet door after a stressful day at work, and I sarcastically replied to his mood. He immediately apologized when he calmed down the next day, but it scared me at the time. This was a year ago. His temper is an everyday thing, but it's never directed at me. He also used to tell me to pack my things and F off if we are arguing. I'm definitely a calm, let's talk this out person, and he's a I don't want to talk about it person. He often feels attacked, and it's something we had to work through. He's much better now. He tried anger management, but said it wasn't working with his schedule. His communication is much better too. A part Apart from that, he is an affectionate goofball who treats me like a queen. He would do anything for me, I just have to ask. But it's like a different person takes over. On to the incident. We were going on a holiday this week, 12-hour road trip, and we decided to leave at 3 a.m. He said he didn't sleep well and I annoyed him because I wasn't ready quick enough. I wasn't. I forgot some things and I admit that I took too long and we left late. We then stopped an hour later to grab a quick service station meat pie. I don't really remember the conversation leading up to this. I don't even know if we were arguing. All I know is his meat pie leaked on his shirt. He swore and ripped his shirt down the middle like the Hulk and threw it out the window. He proceeded to speed and had the angriest look on his face. I was scared. It was a dark road and I could see he was doing 140 kilometers. I told him I was scared and to stop and he ignored me. I told him to please calm down and stop, and suddenly he slammed on the brakes and all of the things in the back flew forward. He turned to look at me and said, "There," before taking off again, only going faster, doing 160 kilometers. I sat there terrified to speak up again and that we would hit something. He stopped not long after and told me to drive because he was going to sleep. He woke up 2 hours later and didn't say anything about it. It was an hour or so after he woke up. He said sorry about before and I was really tired. Now I am in shock. He doesn't seem to think it was a huge deal. It's been 2 days and we've just moved on from it. He said nothing happened and he knows how to control a vehicle. And why would he put himself in danger, he says. I just need some advice. I'm starting to rethink this whole relationship based off this incident because I'm scared to tell my friends because they will hold judgments on him. Update. I'm so completely overwhelmed by the response from this group. I never thought I would receive so many helpful and worried comments. I have 4 more days of this trip, and since so many are telling me to be careful, I am not going to do anything until I get home. You all have shown me it's time to tell my sister and brother what's going on. They live in the same city. Thank you all again for your help. I feel so rattled. I've never once thought it was abuse. I just thought he needed help and support. Here are some relevant comments. User 1 said, "Hug, hug, 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 hug. I'm sorry that you're going through this. Deep down, you know that it's more than him being a hothead. He displayed some intensely scary behaviors along with an unwillingness, not inability, but unwillingness to process his emotions in a healthy way. It will not get better. It will start to become even more confusing as your brain struggles to comprehend how this nice and sweet man can be so violent at the same time. He apologizes to keep you from leaving. This is known behavior from an abuser. Please, OP, listen to us. Please don't ignore what your brain and instincts are trying to tell you. Please don't let the fear of judgment hinder you from seeking help to get out of a dangerous situation. Talk to family, talk to friends, reach out to people. You need to get yourself to safety, because if you stay with this man, he will endanger your life again." I am sort of in shock with these comments. I've never once called it abuse or even thought of it. He just had a problem that needed to be worked through. My friends and family love him. I've never told them about this side, but now I'm starting to think I didn't tell them about his struggles because I knew what they would say. Then user 2 said, "He is not a good partner or a good guy. He does not care about you. Point blank, period. End of story. I need you to know that. I'm not trying to be harsh, but it's imperative you realize he does not care about you. He's willingly putting you in unsafe positions and doesn't even like or respect you enough to stop his terrible behavior when you tell him you're scared. His ego is then so huge, he needs to embarrass you in some sort of gotcha moment when you call out his behavior. I wish you the best, but run. This man is a loser who is also deeply bitter. Your life will be so much better, I promise. There is no award for suffering. I know you've invested time and yourself in this relationship, but put it simply, this man isn't even kind to you. The bare minimum should be kindness." I am finding it hard to reconcile that the man who cried when we were picking out our first dance song, who told me I'm the best woman he's ever met and that he feels so lucky that we met, the man who cuddles me on the couch and rubs my sore back at the end of the week is this abusive man too. His mother said he rages. Their incidents are worse than anything that he's ever done with me. His mother hugged me and cried when I got him to go to anger management because she's been trying for years. His sister doesn't have a relationship with him, and since being with me, they have mended it and became close again. She said I seemed to make him a lot calmer. I am starting to question why I never seriously questioned what he was like before me. I'm starting to wonder if the longer we are together, the more that side is appearing. I am just absolutely devastated. Update. Thank you to everyone who commented on my previous post. It's been a while since my original post and a lot has happened. The end of the relationship was nothing short of a soap opera. I spent nights in bed next to him on our holiday reading Lundy Barcroft's book, and I was floored. All the comments were so eye-opening, even if I didn't want to believe it, that it was that serious. So many things were hitting home. So many things I did not consider abuse, but these were things I wasn't telling friends or family about. I was protecting him from anyone knowing what he was really like. A part of the book referenced cheating and abusers as one archetype that matched a lot of my partner's attributes. I thought I was crazy, but over a week after we got home from our holiday, he got home from work. We had dinner and he went to shower, so I checked his phone. I repeated this for quite a few nights, gathering evidence. He has been cheating on me with lots of different women over the last 3 years. And currently, one woman who knows all about me and likes to talk about how awful I am with him. A lot of things he thought he deleted, Messenger archived. I eventually confronted him one of those nights when he was coming to bed, and he told me he was too tired to talk about it and that I invaded his privacy and that they were just friends. I was so angry. I pushed it in terms of keeping the conversation going, not physically, and he said he wanted to sleep, and I said if I wasn't getting any sleep, then he wasn't either, and he snapped. He punched a hole in the wall. He broke our dresser. It's destroyed. He went into the kitchen and smashed other things. It was terrifying. I was begging him to stop. He then said I was lucky something of his wasn't broken. I said, why? What does that mean? And he said he would have ended my life. I got my things and snuck to my car and went to a friend's house. He called me and said not to bother coming home. I wasn't. Why would I? The next day, he said it was all my fault because I wouldn't let him walk away, that I was a moron and ruined everything, that I should have let him sleep and waited until the morning. I called my brothers and said I needed to get my things. I decided it wasn't a good idea for them to come yet because I think they would have escalated the situation as they were angry too. I took my sister and friend and had them wait in the car until I was sure it was safe. He wasn't meant to be home, but was. They said I had 5 minutes until they were coming in. I told him I'd come to get my things. He got emotional and said he never wanted me to see that side of him. I said we were done, and he got angry again and chased me into the garage, throwing pillows at me. He said I would regret not fighting for this, and I asked him what I was fighting for, because this isn't how you treat someone you love. He collapsed into a crying mess and said he loved me too much and needed me, that he'd been an idiot and ruined it all. He said I could take what I wanted, that he would speak to me tomorrow when we've both slept. He got upset when my friend and sister came inside because he didn't know they knew. I took the opportunity to get my clothes, and my brothers returned for my things 2 days after. He sobbed on the phone for me to reconsider, that he wasn't getting attention from me and did the wrong thing, that he's really stressed, and it all came to a head. He also told me this would not happen to me again, and the devil I knew was better than any other. He was begging me to come home. I cut contact. 3 weeks later, he's posting a picture with one of the other women and in a relationship with her. I am just floored by the turn in events. Thank you to everyone who commented. This man was an abuser, and writing here saved me. Please don't date angry men. Please realize if there's physical violence of any kind, they are capable of worse. The cheating was a bullet I did not see coming. I never suspected him of that ever in the whole 3 years, and I'm extremely embarrassed of being replaced so easily and being fooled so easily. I am living with my brother now. My self-esteem is in the toilet, and I guess I'm starting my life over again now. Here are some relevant comments. User 1 said, "Welcome to a new life. Wipe the slate clean, but keep the lessons learned. I am proud of you for standing up for yourself. It took me 10 years. You did it in 3. Very close to 4. To be honest, it was still very hard to let go. I was so trauma bonded to him. It's still a work in progress." Then user 2 said, "I'm so glad you're okay. So many women don't make it out. I'm so glad you did and have a supportive network to the next chapter." I can understand why the main reason was that I told someone. It sounds silly, but after telling my friend, I couldn't take it back. Seeing her horror and worry spurred me on. Also, the idea of her disappointment if I went back, the bond was so strong. I still miss the good parts, but I know he's not a good man, and I have completely ghosted him. So for our longer time viewers, how quickly did you guys know that this was an abusive relationship, or that the boyfriend was just a terrible person? Was it the title? Was it the first sentence? It was, I think, the first two sentences for me when she said, "My boyfriend's great, but he's a bit of a hothead." And I said, oh boy, here we go. But thankfully, she realized these things and had like some urge, and the subconscious is a powerful thing, and was yelling at her, and she went online and got the feedback and realization that she needed and left the relationship. The only thing I feel like some people will probably say, and I do believe this, you probably don't want to confront an abusive, angry, violent person, because that could have been bad. He threatened her life. So we've read another story where a girl was in a similar situation, and instead of having that confrontation with the violent guy, she just left, because that's safer. And if she wants to have that final confrontation, definitely do it with someone else there or in a public place, because again, she could have gotten her life ended by him as he threatened her life. Oh my goodness. Also, she described him as an affectionate goofball. Those are exact words that I used to describe myself. So I'm even extra angry at this guy. Get him out of here. Boo this man. And finally, though, before we go on to the next story, there's one thing that one commenter said that really stuck with me. And they said, there is no award for suffering. Those are really good words. I like that. But anyway, next story. Story number 3. I am M29. My girlfriend is F27. I have just discovered that her family is putting me down in front of her and me. Can I ever rebuild the trust? A bit of background. I am a 29-year-old man who met my girlfriend, a 27-year-old woman, when we both moved to a new town for work about a year ago. We hit it off right away and have been together ever since. Her family is Portuguese, and from the beginning, I've made efforts to be involved and get to know them, despite the language barrier as well. I have met her family several times, and on the surface, they've always been nothing but nice and welcoming to me. However, they have a habit of speaking Portuguese around me, which I initially didn't mind because I understood it was their first language and it made them comfortable. Wanting to connect with them on a deeper level and surprise my girlfriend, I recently began learning Portuguese. At a recent family dinner, my new language skills unexpectedly revealed a hurtful reality. As I listened, I realized they were talking about me in derogatory terms, calling me dumb, amongst other insults, right in front of me, all while smiling and acting friendly. From what I've gathered, my girlfriend understands what's being said, but doesn't seem to join in on the insults. However, she hasn't done anything to stop it either, occasionally trying to hide her reactions or snickers. I feel betrayed and humiliated, and I am questioning the integrity of our relationship and her loyalty to me. I am at a crossroads and unsure how to address the situation. Confronting her family directly seems daunting, especially considering the language barrier and not wanting to cause a rift. However, I also feel that I can't simply ignore such disrespect, and I'm concerned about what this means for the future of our relationship, especially if we were to have a family of our own. Should I confront my girlfriend about her family's behavior and express how hurtful it is to me? How can I navigate the situation in a way that respects my relationship with her, but also stands up for myself? Any insights, experiences, or suggestions would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. Here are some relevant comments. User 1 said, if she's not standing up for you, she's not much of a partner. It doesn't sound like she's scared of them or anything. You could calmly tell her that you didn't want to spoil it, but you've been learning the language and you're disappointed at the way she and her family talk about you. But what could she say that would excuse it? If you want to be petty, you could wait until they insult you at the next dinner and respond in Portuguese, thanks for the food, and this dumb guy is gonna see himself out. And it was nice knowing you all. But I just don't understand being this rude and frankly cruel. You sound like a nice person. I think even if I tell her I know, it does not change how I feel about her because she still did not stand up for me and allowed it to happen without telling me. Update. This past Sunday, we visited her family again, and not surprisingly, the pattern of rude comments continued. This time, they called me dumb, amongst other things, and everyone laughed. I laughed along with them, and then asked them to pass the salad in Portuguese. I could see the awareness and embarrassment spreading across the table, one by one. I guess you don't make friends with salad. The dinner that followed was inevitably awkward. No one made a scene, but the atmosphere was tense. On the way home, I told my girlfriend that I wanted to break up. To my surprise, she didn't even ask why, which only confirmed my decision was the right one. Given that we both moved to this town for work and were living in a company-supplied rental, I reached out to our HR department to explain my situation. They were understanding and agreed to arrange a separate place for me. In the meantime, I'm staying at a hotel until everything is sorted out. I honestly feel empty about it now. Empty inside. It's been a roller coaster, and now there's sort of nothing. Maybe I will feel better tomorrow. Update 2. I spent today packing my things, and she spent it crying. Difficult day for both of us. Thank you all for the comments and support and messages. If I need to update, I will, but I need to rest right now. It has been very difficult to process all of this.
Here are some more relevant comments. User 1 asked, did she explain why she did not stand up for you?
In her defense, she has a very dominating family and is not a confrontational person. I don't expect her to have stood up for me. Maybe I should, but I would have expected her to tell me at least.
Then user 2 said, that was a pretty baller way to call them out, bro. And finally, user 3 said, you don't understand how perfectly you handled this. Yeah, they suck, but that doesn't reflect on you. Their meanness was not deserved on your part. I'm glad you knew your value enough to end things with your girlfriend. You deserve better. Just imagine sitting with your family and saying horrible things in another language. Awful. You know what? That is a pretty baller way for OP to go out. So let me ask you guys, if you were in OP's situation, how would you have handled it? Would you do something petty? Would you learn a little bit more of the language and do what he did? Would you just walk out? Would you storm off in English? Would you flip him off? Me? I feel like I would get really quiet. And then they'd laugh, and then I'd be like, that's really funny, and then stare at them like I am right now. Or something like that. I don't know. I would just make them know that I know what they're saying. And be like, yep, you guys suck. Anyway, and then I would flip them off. No, I would not flip someone off in their home, but I would make them feel bad about themselves in their home and then leave. And then I would break up with my girlfriend and then do a backflip successfully and then leave. All right, guys, that is the end of the video. Please feel free to share how you would handle the situation. And thank you for watching. Bye-bye.